Okay, this is lesson 4.13, module 4, lesson 13, and your learning goal is to be able to multiply unit fractions by unit fractions. We're going to talk in a little bit about what a unit fraction is, and the problem of the day we will actually talk about at the end of today's lesson. Okay, so let's begin by talking about what a unit fraction is. If you look at these examples of unit fractions on this screen, you can see what they all have in common is their numerator is 1. As we've learned before, the denominator tells you what kind of units you have. For instance, in the first one right here, we have halves, here we have tenths, we have sixths, and here we have 235ths. A unit fraction is a fraction where the numerator is 1 because you have one of the units. For example, here in this example, we have 1/2, 1/10, 1/6, and 235th. A unit fraction, again, is one of the units. Today we're going to learn how to multiply unit fractions by other unit fractions, again, fractions that all have numerators of 1, but we're going to see how we can use pictures to do it. So in this example, it says Jan had 4 pans of Rice Krispie treats. She sends half of those pans to school with her children. How many pans of treats does Jan send to school? Well, if we have 4 pans of Rice Krispie treats, we can see that half of them is exactly 2 pans. So in this case, half of 4 is 2. Remember, of course, that we know that this word of, right here, in math means multiplication. So another way we could say this is that 1/2 times 4 is 2. Now in this example, Jan now has 2 pans of Rice Krispie treats, and she's still sending half of them, but rather than starting with 4 pans, she's only starting with 2. So if we draw a picture, here's 1 pan, here's the second pan. If she splits them, half of 2 is exactly 1 pan. Another way, of course, to write this is 1/2 times 2 equals 1. Now, let's see what happens. Jan now only has 1 pan of Rice Krispie treats, and she's still going to send half of the pan to school with her children. How many pans of treats does she send? Well, this time she only has 1 pan, and she's going to cut it in half. So she can only send this part, which of course is 1/2 of a pan. So in this case, this picture is showing 1/2 of 1 pan, or 1/2 times 1/2, times 1, which is 1/2 of a pan. You can see here we're doing a unit fraction, 1/2 is a unit fraction, multiplied by a whole number. This is similar to what we worked on last week. Okay, now in this instance, Jan is only starting with half a pan of Rice Krispie treats, and she's still going to send half of what she has to school with her children. So this time, Jan doesn't even have a whole pan. She only is starting with 1/2, and we can label that she's starting with 1/2 of the pan. If I cut that half into half to show again that this is half of the half, this is the part that she's sending. Well, now we can see that altogether the entire pan has been cut into 1, 2, 3, 4 total pieces. So that means my units are now fourths. And one of these pieces, the part that the blue and red overlap, is the part she's sending to school. So what we see here is that 1/2 of, she's still sending half of what she has, and this time instead of having 1 pan or 2 pans or 4 pans, she only has a half of a pan. Of course, mathematically, this is the same thing as 1/2 times 1/2, and we can see by the picture that she's sending then 1/4 of the pan to school. Another way to say this is 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4. Now, I want to take this time to remind you that you might have a clue as to how to do this just with numbers, multiplying fractions just using numbers. But our focus this week really is using pictures, such as this one with labels and such, to represent our mathematical thinking. Okay, this time Jan has made 1/3 of a pan of Rice Krispie treats. So let's go ahead and draw that. There's my pan, and I'm going to show that she's starting with 1/3. This label is super important because it's showing that we are starting with 1/3 of a pan. Now she's once again going to send half of what she has to school. So here's half of the 1/3. What we're doing mathematically is 1/2 of 1/3, which is 1/2 times 1/3. And you can see this refers back to our learning goal because here's a unit fraction multiplied by another unit fraction, which is exactly what we said we're going to be doing in our learning goal. Now if I look at my pan of brownies, I've now split it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. So my units now are sixths. And 1/2 of 1/3 is 1 out of those 6. So then if she's sending half of 1/3 of a pan, she's sending 1/6 of a pan to school. Here's that problem of the day. It says a sales lot is filled with vehicles for sale. 1/3 of those vehicles are pickup trucks. Okay. Now 1/3 of those trucks are white. What fraction of all the vehicles are white pickup trucks? So if I were to draw a model, and this is all the cars, only 1/3 of them, 1/3 of them are pickup trucks. Now if I were to, pickup trucks. Okay, now if I were to zoom in on that third, not all of them are white, right? Only 1/3 of them are white. So only this portion is white. W for white. So essentially 1/3 of all the pickup trucks are white, but only 1/3 of all the cars are pickup trucks. So we're finding 1/3 of the pickup trucks, which are 1/3 of all the cars. So essentially here we're finding 1/3 of 1/3. Well, and back to my original model, if I were to divide the pickup trucks into thirds, there's the portion that would be white pickup trucks. So then I would divide all these up into thirds as well. Then I could see altogether I have 9 units, and one of those units are the white pickup trucks. So I can see that that's 1/9 of the cars.